Hello everyone, I'm Tommy the Keyblade Master and this is my channel. Welcome to my Castlevania Countdown. Today we're going to finish with my favorite Castlevania game, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Now to be fair, I did have trouble narrowing it down to either it being Aria or Dawn of Sorrow. Dawn of Sorrow does have a better castle and some cooler weapons to pick up. But that said, it also has the seal system. Being an early DS game, a lot of developers felt the need to use touchscreen whether the touchscreen added to the game or not. And like I've said before, sometimes just because you can do something in a game doesn't mean you should. The seal system in Dawn of Sorrow kinda destroys a lot of the fun. If you don't know what that is, basically to beat the boss, after you've lowered their HP down to 0, you have to then draw a picture on the DS screen in the form of a seal in order to beat it. You screw up the seal, the boss comes back with half of its life. Not exactly fun. So Aria of Sorrow is my number one just because all around it's a more balanced game. Well, you know the typical Castlevania story, don't you? Every 100 years Dracula rises and it's up to some whip-wielding Belmont to put him in his grave. And the setting is usually some medieval European place, I bet. Huh? Wait, what? Stop. 2035 Japan? So Dracula finally got smart and decided to choose futuristic Japan, huh? Well, I guess it can't be easy for the guy. He only gets out once every 100 years, decides to paint the town literally red, give a few people hickeys, and what happens? Well, he ends up getting nailed back in a coffin for another 100 years. Maybe Japan will treat him better. Okay, so that's not exactly what happened. In this game, you take control of Soma Cruz, who is a foreign exchange student to Japan. As he walks up the stairways to Hakuba Shrine to visit his friend Mina, he all of a sudden is transported along with Mina to a strange European-looking castle, which happens to be none other than Castlevania. He meets Janae Arkido, who tells him exactly what's going on. It seems that even though Dracula was destroyed in the year 1999, rather than let his castle collapse and be reborn 100 years later, Alucard and the Belmont sealed away the castle in an eclipse with the help of people from the Hakuba Shrine. Although Dracula and his powers are separated hopefully forever, Alucard worried that someday a reincarnation of Dracula would find its way into the eclipse and find its power again, and thus beginning the whole cycle all over again. So he sent a bunch of people to the castle to try to keep this from happening, and Soma just happens to be caught in the middle of it. On top of that, Soma finds out he can absorb spirits from the monsters he killed and control their powers. If Soma wants to get him and Mina out of this mess, he must find a way to the throne room and find an exit from there. And of course he has to do it before the real reincarnation of Dracula, Graham Jones, manages to get to the throne room. Of course, as he goes, he manages to meet a few interesting characters, including Yoko, a witch who can't seem to keep good secrets, and a shopkeeper, as well as the amnesiac Jay, who tells him that he thinks there might be more than one person who can inherit Dracula's power, and Soma better watch his back. It's an interesting story all the way around. It may not get as complex as Symphony of the Night, but it does a good job actually concluding the Castlevania storyline. Like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Aria of Sorrow also has multiple endings. To get the best ending, you have to expose who the real Dracula is. To do this, you find books with clues about what type of powers you'll have to equip for the final fight. Now, I won't spoil who the real Dracula turns out to be, but in order to expose him, equip Fire Demon, Giant Bat, and Succubus souls to Soma. Once you do that, after you beat Graham, the real Dracula will appear. If you don't get that, you'll just get the standard ending. Beating Dracula gives you the best ending, of course. Of course, this is easier said than done. Only one of those souls, the Giant Bat, comes through the story of the game. Getting the Fire Demon soul and the Succubus soul takes work. Succubuses are fortunately found all over the place in the final area. However, to get the Fire Demon soul, you'll have to find a secret area of the castle and spam that area until one of them decides to give up the goods. Still, it's an interesting way to get the ending, and I kinda like it. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow is the best looking of the GBA games, not only because it came last, but because it doesn't have the problems of the other one. Circle of the Moon was way too dark, meanwhile Harmony of Dissonance went way too far correcting this. Aria of Sorrow just seems to hit the sweet spot. The graphics are kinda nice and bright, so you can still see them if you're unfortunate enough to be playing this on an old school GBA. Like I said, the SP and DS Lite is just so much better ways of playing old Castlevania games. The sprites are still good, they're large, and pretty well detailed for the Game Boy Advance. The background effects in this game are awesome. Just look at how all those bats are flying by the tower in the moonlight. It just looks gorgeous. And Soma and all the enemies and characters are well animated, while the DS version obviously does them better. The GBA one is nothing to sneeze at. This is probably one of the best 2D Game Boy Advance games I can think of. As much as I love the Game Boy Advance's ability to do 2D games, its music always was a little bit less than what the Super Nintendo could produce. Smaller speakers plus no Sony chip. Still, while the music may not be as sharp or as great as, say, Super Castlevania 4, it still works. It's still creepy, still eerie. Each section feels like it should, and the music's still somewhat memorable, even if it's not quite as clear as it was in Super Castlevania 4, or as many catchy tunes. And it was a huge improvement from Harmony of Dissonance, which I do believe they got that name because listening to too much of that game's soundtrack will make one dissident. I guess I should mention, although there is no voiceover for the little cutscenes, what little voiceover there is all in Japanese. Hello. And while there's not much Japanese voice speaking here, what there isn't really translated or subtitled, because usually it's just moths or goths. That's like the only English word, and as you can tell, that incredibly Spanish lady has one heck of a Japanese accent. Now it's time to talk about the gameplay. Like a lot of Iga Castlevania games, this one's a Metroidvania. You're going to be doing pretty much the same thing you would do in a Metroid game. Find power-ups so you can reach new areas. In this case, Soma will be collecting souls. Of course, it's not just key abilities like double jump or being able to stand on water for short periods of time that Soma will get. Sometimes killing enemies will give them special ability, like the ability to throw out fireballs, for example. Of course, not all these souls are for attacks. Some of them will let you dive underneath water or even stand on the water to reach new places. Like I said, it's one of the best systems I've seen in this type of game. Throw in some light RPG elements like leveling up by killing enemies, and you've got yourself a really fun game. Now, the game is nice enough to even throw in a New Game Plus mode. In this mode, you'll start with all the souls you've acquired throughout the course of the game, with the exception of a few that are gotten in the story. So you're not going to get some of the key items that you need to get from place to place. You'll still have to play the game in the order you need to. Still, it's a cool mode. You also start with all your weapon and armor. So kids, if you download this off the Wii U eShop, you're not going to start with this big old sword that you've seen me use throughout this video. You're going to start off with a small dagger. The sword's one of the best weapons you can get. It's kind of cool. Little on the slow side, but it's still faster than a lot of the Belmont's whip. It has greater range than the whip and can do massive damage. And yes, in case you're wondering, there is a Belmont mode just like Symphony of the Night. I won't tell you the name of the character you'll be using, but he will use a whip as you go through the game. Just like Symphony of the Night, most of the RPG elements are vastly toned down. You won't collect items, you won't have a story. It's basically just running through the castle as another character whipping stuff. It's kind of boring, to be honest with you, but it's not a bad extra. I will admit, Dawn of Sorrow also has another mode like that, except it skips into Castlevania 3 territory that allows you to switch between different characters, all based on Castlevania 3 characters. So Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow's Belmont mode is worth a look. Aria of Sorrow, not so much. I give Castlevania Aria of Sorrow a 5 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it's darn near close. It does everything a great Metroidvania game should do. It outdoes Metroid in its stage design and the outlay of its maze. It has terrific powers. Just the amount of powers you can pick up by defeating enemies is just cool. You get some awesome weapons. The game is not uber long, but it's not short. It's good 6 or 7 hours long, and the story for Castlevania standards is excellent with a really great plot twist and a story that does an awesome job of concluding the timeline. Well, this isn't the last of the original Castlevania series by any means. Castlevania Aria of Sorrow pretty much says the story stops here, at least if you don't count the direct sequel, which really doesn't add much. It's just more fun with these characters that are introduced in Aria. It's just a blast to play. Well worth $8 on the Wii U Shop channel. Anyways, thank you all for watching my top 5 Castlevania countdown. It was a really great fun series to put together. Konami put together some of the best games ever made in this. Wait a minute, Sonny, no 8-bit games. Are you an NES hater? No, I don't hate any of the classic NES games. They're all available on the Virtual Console, and all are worth purchasing, with a little disclaimer about Castlevania 2. It's not quite as good as the other ones. That said, they're very hard, and I would say some of the changes they did to Castlevania 3 kind of make it a little bit more frustrating than it needs to be. And I believe some of the fairly newer ones just had a better sense of balance and were a lot more fun. I'm going to join you, UI, for disagreeing with me. Back, I say, back, or else I'll start streaming every modern-day vampire movie there is known to exist. What's the matter? Out of battery in your new fangled doohickey? Now here I come. What the heck did you do? A good vampire hunter never goes off unprepared. I just impaled you with the one thing old farts, undead or alive, hate, and that is to be told the truth about their precious past. While the game industry might have a few things that annoy us now, there were certainly a lot of things that pissed us off in the 80s. I just stabbed you with what I think is one of Konami's worst games and one of the worst NES games I've ever played. Don't listen to him, kiddies. Konami never made a bad game in the 80s. Well, when you consider Konami was also ultra to get around some of Nintendo's really crazy contracts, and then you could throw in the likes of Star Trek and Ninja Turtles, none of which are stellar, then yeah, they did make a few bad games. But this one actually has their name, and it makes the original Ninja Turtles game look like a masterpiece. Game like that doesn't exist, Sonny. Oh yeah? Play the intro.
The Adventures of Bayou Billy.
Well, that takes care of that little problem. Anyways, all these games are great that I reviewed on this top 5 list, and the best part is they're all available on the PSN, Xbox Live Arcade, or the Wii Virtual Console. There's no reason why you shouldn't get these games. They're easy to get. You don't have to go out of your way. You don't have to pay high prices on eBay. Every one of them is worth getting. And some of the other games I listed on this list, like Castlevania 3 and Castlevania Chronicles, are also well worth checking out. Not so fast there, buddy boy. Who the heck are you? It looks like someone's been playing with my tablet's photo filters again. Sheesh, no wonder why it's out of battery. Anyways, what do you want? I need the ghost of the old fart you just slew at that game. And I'm here to curse you. Let me guess. In order to break the curse, I have to travel around Romania, collect your body parts, burn you in an old castle, and then whip the crap out of Skeletor, right? Yeah. What do you think this is? Castlevania 2? No, it's much worse. In order to break the curse I put on you, you're going to have to review the game you stabbed me with. And if I refuse to do it, then the curse will turn you into the worst thing mankind has ever known. A fan of Honey Boo Boo. Well, I better get down to it. Let's take a look at that game one more time. Maybe I should have just let him drain me dry. Well, it looks like I got a really crappy game to review sometime in the near future. And if you want to see me bash the heck out of Bayou Billy, please click the subscribe button. But I have a few other games in the pipeline I'm also working on, so don't be too surprised if a few other reviews pop up before then.